Today I want to talk about the elites. There is much talk and much reference to the elites and what the elites want to do to ordinary decent people like you and me. But you must back up the digger a minute and have a look at precisely what's going on when we're talking about, or when you're hearing people talking about, the elites. If you remember the black and white movies, the good old cowboy movies, or indeed any movie going back to time immemorial, any story going back to time immemorial, David and Goliath, you always need a good guy and a bad guy. You always need an us and them. And if you can somehow set up an us and them situation, you as a politician, or you as an influencer, or you as a person seeking to gather a group of fans or a group of individuals around you, or a tribe, you want to build a base, you want to build a tribe, then you need to set up a narrative of us and them. You need to set up a narrative of the bad guy. They want to do this to you. They want to do that to you. They want to screw us. People like us are going to get screwed by whoever. So Trump did it. The Dems want to do it. The Dems want to do that. The socialists, the communists, the liberals, the so on and so forth. There's always a them. There has to be a them, because the narrative is powerful and effective when there's a them, when there is a bogeyman, when there's an enemy that we can all agree there's the enemy. And so in Ireland over the last number of years, we've seen the increasing use of the word elites in discourse, in debate, in society. And the elites tend to be politicians, tend to be people who are doing well, tend to be judges, tend to be the judiciary, tend to be other people, but not people like us, people who make decisions with which we don't agree, people that have a different view to life and to society and how it should be organised. Those people, they are the elite. But the elites are never really defined, except insofar as they're the people who make decisions that we don't like. But it's a bit of a false narrative, and you need to guard against it, in my view. You need to guard against being sold a pup, quite frankly, by politicians or by anybody else who's seeking to influence you, who's seeking to gather you around a particular cause or a particular issue or a particular flag on the basis that you and me, we're normal people, but the elites want to screw you. Now, when Gemma O'Doherty, for example, and John Waters went to the High Court and the Court of Appeal with their constitutional challenge to the COVID laws, which they were perfectly entitled to do, and when they lost, all the commentary then from supporters, and indeed from them, was that the dice was loaded from the start, that the judiciary, the judges were biased, the politicians were biased, and the elites were out to screw them. The elites were out to do them down, and they never had a chance. And that is a little bit like playing a football or hurling or soccer or rugby match, or indeed any match, any sporting contest, and at the end of it blaming the ref because the outcome isn't what you wished it to be. Perhaps the reason that Waters and O'Doherty failed in their bid, perhaps the reason why other challenges may fail, perhaps the reason why other issues that were canvassed in the courts failed or did not go in the direction that was sought. Perhaps the reason was because the case was a bad one. Perhaps it was presented badly. Perhaps there was no basis to it. Perhaps there was no reality to it. But maybe, just maybe, it wasn't the elites. It wasn't the judiciary. It wasn't corruption. It wasn't bias. It may just have been that the argument that the person was seeking to make was a poor one, or they had failed abjectly to put it forward. But this idea of us and them This idea of people like us getting screwed by the elites, getting screwed by them. The elites seem to change, the definition of what constitutes the elite seems to change over time, depending on economic circumstances, for example, because not too long ago, 10 years ago, for example, before the property market crashed, the elites were the banks and the developers and the builders. We don't hear so much about the elites in that context now. Now the elite is somebody else. It's the judiciary, it's judges, it's politicians, it's the liberal left, it's the far right, it's the whatever. But the ordinary man or woman who is thinking about things in society, who's thinking about how they want to live in society, how they want to form a society, how they want Ireland to be, that person, that thinking person, needs to consider to what degree they may be being manipulated by this false argument, this straw man argument of setting up a bogeyman, setting up a whole raft of bogeymen, setting up elites who want to do us down, us ordinary decent individuals. It's the elites that done it. It's the bogeyman. It's the enemy. And as I say, Trump has done it or did it for the last number of years in America, and many people, many politicians, many individuals will use it for their own nefarious purposes. But I think there's a danger that we will fall into a trap of blaming others, blaming the so-called elites when decisions don't go for us, when decisions go against us. And as I say, maybe the reason the decision went against us is not because the other person or the judge was a member of the elite, not because the school to which they went somehow coloured their judgment against you, or the type of individual or argument you might be putting forward. Perhaps the reason you failed or your argument failed was because it was simply a poor argument and failed to win the day, and these things happen. But again, like playing any sport, after it, you can only go so far with the referee robbed us argument. Sooner or later, your credibility is going to be called into question. So hopefully we will recognise when we are being played and when we're being sold a pup, when we're being sold a false narrative of the so-called elites wanting to do down decent people like you and me. Anyway, hope you find this video stimulating or interesting or thought-provoking. If you do, I'd appreciate if you gave it the thumbs up down below. Thanks a lot.